Want the heat off? Hand us the house, my in-laws threatened, standing at our door with a gang behind them. They thought fear would make my husband and me surrender. But they had no idea about my past. They picked wrong. I'm Cassandra Cassie Miller, 34 years old, and I never expected to open my front door to find my in-laws Martha and Gerald flanked by 3 burly men with cold eyes. Want the heat off? Hand us the house, Martha hissed, while Gerald nodded smugly. My husband Nathan stood frozen beside me, confusion and fear etched across his face. What they didn't know was that beneath my quiet counselor exterior lay a past that had prepared me precisely for moments like this. Nathan and I met at a charity auction for the local children's hospital 5 years ago. I was volunteering at the registration table when this tall, kind-eyed man with slightly disheveled brown hair approached with a donation that was surprisingly generous for someone who wasn't dressed like the typical wealthy donor. We started talking, and by the end of the night, we'd exchanged numbers. There was something gentle yet confident about Nathan that drew me in immediately. Our romance moved quickly. After just 8 months of dating, he proposed during a hike to a waterfall we both loved. Nathan's career as an architectural engineer kept him busy designing sustainable commercial buildings, while I had settled into my role as a high school guidance counselor. What Nathan didn't know then was that my career choice was a deliberate step away from my former life. I loved helping teenagers navigate their problems, and the quiet predictability of school schedules offered a stability I had craved. My grandmother would have loved you, Nathan told me often during our first year of marriage. Gloria had raised him for many of his formative years while his parents were busy building their import business. When she passed away just 6 months after our wedding, we were devastated. What we hadn't expected was the reading of her will. She left us the house. Nathan had whispered in disbelief when the lawyer informed us that Gloria's Victorian home in the historic district was now ours. The 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with its wraparound porch and mature oak trees wasn't just any property. Built in the 1890s, it had been lovingly maintained and updated over the years. Gloria had purchased it in the 1970s when the neighborhood was still affordable, and now its value had increased tenfold. This is where we spent summers catching fireflies. Nathan told me the first time he gave me a tour, his eyes misting as he showed me the backyard. She taught me to bake cookies in this kitchen. Every room held memories for him, and soon they began to hold memories for us too. We spent weekends stripping old wallpaper and painting walls in soft modern colors. We updated the kitchen with new countertops while preserving the original cabinets. The house was a perfect blend of historic charm and modern convenience, and it felt like Gloria's spirit approved of our changes. What became clear very quickly, however, was that Nathan's parents did not approve. Martha and Gerald had always been cold toward me, but the inheritance pushed their behavior into outright hostility. She should have left it to us. I overheard Martha telling a relative at the funeral reception, "What do they know about maintaining a historic property?" From the beginning, Martha had made it clear that I wasn't the woman she'd envisioned for her son. At our first meeting, she'd assessed me with critical eyes, asking pointed questions about my family background and education. When I explained that I'd grown up with a single mother and attended state university on scholarships, her tight smile told me everything I needed to know about her opinion. Gerald was more direct. "Nathan was dating Kimberly Russell before you know. Her father owns half the commercial real estate downtown," he mentioned during our engagement dinner. Nathan had squeezed my hand under the table and changed the subject. But the message was clear. Their disappointment extended to Nathan as well. He had chosen to work for a progressive architectural firm focused on environmental sustainability rather than join the family's import business. Gerald had built the company from scratch, importing luxury goods from Europe, and had always assumed his son would take over eventually. "You have an obligation to the family legacy." Gerald would lecture at holiday gatherings, while Nathan would patiently explain his passion for sustainable design. These conversations always ended the same way, with Gerald storming off and Martha making passive-aggressive comments about ungrateful children. But recently, the family dynamic had shifted. Nathan's sister Elaine had called us, concerned about their parents' business troubles. "Dad's company is in serious trouble," she confided. "They lost their biggest supplier, and there's talk of bankruptcy." Despite their apparent financial difficulties, Martha and Gerald maintained their lavish lifestyle. They still hosted extravagant dinner parties, Martha still wore designer clothes, and Gerald had recently purchased a new luxury sedan. But there were cracks in the facade. "Did you hear about Gerald's poker games?" Nathan's cousin Stephen had whispered to us at a family gathering. "He's in deep with some sketchy characters from what I hear." We'd seen hints of their desperation at the most recent family dinner. Gerald had drunk too much, and made an odd comment as we were leaving. "That house is wasted on you too," he'd slurred. "No children to fill it, no appreciation for its value." Martha had quickly hushed him and ushered us out, but the comment had stayed with me. There was something calculating in Gerald's eyes that made me uneasy. "They're just bitter about the inheritance," Nathan had assured me on the drive home. "They'll get over it eventually." But something in my old instincts had awakened, and I'd begun to watch them more carefully. Those instincts, long dormant, would soon prove terrifyingly accurate. The doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon while Nathan and I were planning our garden renovations. Through the peephole, I could see Martha's perfectly coiffed silver hair and Gerald's imposing figure. "They didn't mention they were coming by," Nathan said with surprise as he opened the door. The warm greeting he'd prepared died on his lips when he saw not just his parents but 3 men standing behind them. Martha wore a designer trench coat despite the mild weather, her makeup flawless as always, but her eyes held a hardness I'd never seen before. Gerald stood with his shoulders squared, his expensive watch catching the light as he adjusted his position. "We need to talk," Gerald said, pushing past Nathan into our foyer without waiting for an invitation. Martha followed, her high heels clicking on the hardwood floors. The 3 men entered last, spreading out slightly in our entryway, in a way that immediately raised my alarm bells. "This is Marcus." Gerald gestured to a tall, broad-shouldered man with close-cropped hair and a scar above his right eyebrow. "And Devon and Troy," he added, nodding toward the other 2 men. Devon was shorter but heavily muscled, with tattoos visible at his wrists. Troy was leaner, with calculating eyes that continuously scanned our home. "What's going on, Dad?" Nathan asked, his voice tense as he instinctively moved closer to me. "We've come to resolve the house situation," Martha said, her voice clipped and businesslike. "Things have become complicated, and we need a simple solution." Gerald pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "These are papers transferring ownership of this house to us. Sign them today, and we'll allow you to stay as tenants for 3 months while you find somewhere else." "What?" Nathan's voice rose in disbelief. "This is our house. Grandma Gloria left it to us legally." "Don't be naive," Gerald snapped. "The business is in trouble. We need liquid assets, and this house is the answer. You didn't earn it, you didn't pay for it. You just got lucky." "I'm not signing anything," Nathan said firmly. "This is our home." Martha's expression hardened. "You don't understand the situation, Nathan. Your father has obligations that must be met. If they aren't, there could be consequences." "Are you threatening us?" I asked, finding my voice. Gerald's eyes slid to the 3 men, who stood silently watching the exchange. "I'm simply saying that accidents happen when debts aren't paid, homes catch fire. Cars malfunction. People get hurt. Get out," Nathan said, his voice shaking with anger. "Get out of our house right now." "Think carefully about this," Gerald said, placing the envelope on our side table. "You have 24 hours to make the right decision." They left without another word, the 3 men following them out to a black SUV parked at the curb. Nathan immediately locked the door and leaned against it, his face pale. "I can't believe this is happening," he whispered. "My own parents." He pulled out his phone and dialed his father's number. I could hear Gerald's voice through the speaker, cold and distant. "Have you come to your senses?" Gerald asked without preamble. "Dad, this is insane. You can't just demand our house and threaten us. What's really going on? Let me help you figure out another solution for the business." "There is no other solution. The house is worth over $1 million in today's market. That solves our problem. Your problem is deciding whether your home is worth more than your safety." "You can't mean that. You're my father. Mom wouldn't let you do this." "Your mother agrees completely." "This is business, Nathan. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal? You're threatening your own son." 24 hours, Gerald said firmly, and then the line went dead. Nathan stared at his phone in disbelief. He hung up on me. My own father just threatened us and hung up on me. We moved to the kitchen where Nathan collapsed into a chair, his hands shaking. I made him tea, my mind already calculating risks and contingencies. "I don't understand how they could do this," Nathan said, his voice hollow. "These are the people who raised me. How could they bring criminals into our home and threaten us?" "I think your father is in deeper trouble than we realized," I said carefully. "Those men weren't just random thugs. They moved like professionals." Nathan looked up sharply. "How would you know that?" I hesitated. "Just an observation. The point is, we need to take this seriously. Those weren't idle threats." "Should we call the police?" Nathan asked. "Not yet," I said, surprising myself with a response. We don't have proof of threats, just implications. And if your father is mixed up with dangerous people, escalating too quickly could make things worse. So, what do? First, we increase security. New locks tonight. Security cameras tomorrow. I know someone who can install them quickly. I was already mentally reviewing the house's vulnerabilities. I should try to talk to my mother alone, Nathan suggested. Maybe she'll be reasonable if my father isn't there. I nodded, though I doubted Martha would be any more reasonable. The cold determination in her eyes had told me everything I needed to know. We'll figure this out, I assured him, squeezing his hand. They picked the wrong house to target. Nathan gave me a weak smile, not understanding the full meaning behind my words. He could know that the skills I'd spent years trying to leave behind were already reawakening, that my mind was already mapping out defensive strategies and contingency plans. For now, I would let him believe we were just a normal couple facing an unusual threat. But if Gerald and his hired muscle pushed us further, they would discover exactly why they had indeed picked the wrong target. 3 days after the ultimatum, Nathan woke me at 6 a.m, his voice tight with anger. They slashed my tires, he said, as I followed him to the driveway in my bathrobe. His car sat lopsided, all 4 tires flat, with what were clearly knife cuts visible in the rubber. The driver's side door had been keyed with a deep scratch running its entire length. Under the windshield wiper was a note printed on plain white paper. This is just the beginning. Reconsider our offer. We're calling the police, I said firmly, all hesitation gone. This was documented property damage with an implicit threat. We needed an official record. Officer Ryan Davis arrived 30 minutes later, a solidly built man with a methodical approach that I appreciated. He documented everything carefully, took the note as evidence, and asked all the right questions. Do you have any security cameras? He asked, looking around our property. Being installed tomorrow, I told him. We've had verbal threats recently. From home? He asked, his pen poised above his notebook. Nathan hesitated, then sighed. My parents. They want us to sign over the house to them. My father's business is failing, and they need money. Officer Davis frowned. And, you believe they're responsible for this vandalism? They came with 3 men 3 days ago. My father implied that accidents could happen if we didn't cooperate. The officer made detailed notes. I'll file the report, but without witnesses or video evidence, it's going to be difficult to prove who did this. We understand, I said. We just want it on record in case things escalate further. I'd recommend a restraining order, Officer Davis suggested, and get those cameras installed as soon as possible. After he left, Nathan called his boss to explain he'd be late. My car's been vandalized, he said wearily. I need to get it towed and find a rental. I drove Nathan to work after arranging for his car to be towed to a repair shop. He was quiet during the drive, his face drawn with stress. I'll pick you up at 5, I told him as he got out. Call me if anything happens. Thanks, Cassie, he said, leaning in to kiss me goodbye. I don't know what I'd do without you right now. I spent the morning making calls to security companies and arranging for an expedited installation of cameras and a monitored alarm system. I also withdrew cash from our emergency fund, knowing we might need resources that couldn't be traced through credit card statements. At 2:30 my phone rang. It was Nathan. My father showed up at the office, he said, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. He made a scene in the lobby, shouting that I was ungrateful and betraying the family. Are you okay? No, he admitted. Amanda called me into her office afterward. She's concerned about how this family drama might affect our client relationships. Amanda was Nathan's boss, the founder of the architectural firm where he worked. She had always been supportive of Nathan's talent, but the firm's reputation was built on discretion and professionalism. What did you tell her? The truth. That my parents are trying to force us to sign over our house and are using intimidation tactics. She was sympathetic but warned me to keep it from affecting my work. Did your father leave? Security escorted him out, but not before he told half the office that I was stealing family property and would regret my choices. By the time I picked Nathan up that evening, word had spread throughout his office. Colleagues gave him sympathetic or curious looks, and he could hear the whispers stop when he entered the break room. Everyone's talking about it, he said as he slid into the passenger seat of my car. Trevor even asked if I was having mob problems because of the guys who were with my dad during the confrontation at home. It'll blow over, I assured him, though I wasn't certain it would. If Gerald was desperate enough to make a scene at Nathan's workplace, he was likely desperate enough to take more drastic measures. That evening, Nathan's phone rang continuously. First was his sister, Elaine, her voice worried. "Nate, what's happening? Dad came home raging about you and the house. They're trying to force us to sign it over to them," Nathan explained. "They brought threatening men to our house, and now my car's been vandalized." "Oh God," Elaine breathed. "I knew they were having money troubles, but I never thought they'd go this far." "Nathan, be careful. Dad was on the phone earlier with someone, and he sounded desperate. He kept saying he'd get the money one way or another." "Thanks for the warning," Nathan said. "You should distance yourself from this, Elaine. I don't want you caught in the middle. You're my brother." "I'm already in the middle," she said firmly. "I'll let you know if I hear anything else." The next call was less supportive. Nathan's brother Richard, who worked in their father's business, was coldly angry. "You're going to destroy this family," he accused, without preamble. "The business is on the brink, and you're sitting in $1 million house you did nothing to earn." "That house was Grandma's gift to us, not a family asset," Nathan argued. "And threatening us isn't going to change that." "You always were selfish," Richard spat. "When this company goes under, and 30 employees lose their jobs, that's on you. And don't think this ends with a few scratches on your precious car. Dad has connections you don't want to mess with." Nathan ended the call and turned off his phone, his hands shaking. "My own family," he whispered. "My own brother threatening me now." I sat beside him on the couch, holding his hand. "We'll get through this," I promised. "The security system will be installed tomorrow, and I've already spoken to a lawyer about the restraining order." "I keep thinking this can't be real," Nathan said. "That I'll wake up and my parents will be the people I thought they were." I didn't know how to tell him that people often aren't who we believe them to be. That sometimes the masks people wear are so convincing that when they finally slip, the reality is unrecognizable. I had learned that lesson years ago in my former career, but Nathan was learning it now in the most painful way possible. "Try to get some sleep," I said gently. "I'll stay up and keep watch tonight." "You can't stay up all night," he protested. "Trust me," I said with a small smile. "I've had practice." He didn't question what I meant, too exhausted by the day's events to notice the hint about my past. As he fell into a troubled sleep, I positioned myself near the window with a clear view of our driveway and front yard, prepared for a long night of vigilance. The security installation couldn't come soon enough. And soon, I would need to make a decision about how much of my past to reveal to Nathan. Because if things continued to escalate, I would need to employ skills I had hoped never to use again. The week following the car vandalism brought a tense quiet. Too quiet. Nathan's parents made no contact, and the threatening men didn't return. But instead of relief, I felt mounting dread. This wasn't a retreat. It was tactical patience. On Friday afternoon, while Nathan was at work, I made a decision. Sitting alone in our kitchen, I stared at my phone, contemplating the call I was about to make. Once I took this step, there would be no going back to the life I'd carefully constructed. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 5 years. Harris answered a familiar voice. "Amanda, it's Cassie Miller, formerly Cassandra Reynolds." There was a pause. "Holy shit. Reynolds? I thought you fell off the face of the earth." "I needed a clean break," I explained. "But now I need your help." Detective Amanda Harris had been my closest colleague at the Bureau. We'd worked together on the Donovan case, the one that had ultimately led to my departure from the FBI. "You in trouble?" she asked, her tone immediately professional. "My husband's family is his father's gotten involved with some dangerous people. They're trying to force us to sign over our house, and I'm concerned about escalation." I explain a situation in detail using the precise, concise language of my former profession. It felt strange how easily I slipped back into that mindset. "I can run background on these 3 men, Amanda offered, "and check if Gerald Miller has known associations in our database." "I'd appreciate that." "And Amanda? My husband doesn't know about my past." "None of it?" she asked, sounding surprised. "He thinks I've always been a high school counselor who moved here for fresh start after a bad breakup." Amanda whistled low. "That's quite a cover story. You planning to tell him now?" "I don't see how I can avoid it. Not if I'm going to protect him properly." After ending the call, I spent the afternoon preparing. I retrieved a locked box from the back of our closet, hidden behind winter clothing. Inside was a small Glock 43, properly registered and maintained, though I hadn't fired it in years. There were also credentials, case notes, and photographs I'd kept as insurance despite official protocol requiring their surrender. When Nathan came home, I had dinner waiting, and a bottle of his favorite wine open on the table. "What's the occasion?" he asked, looking surprised at the formal table setting. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady. And you might want some wine for this conversation. We ate in relative silence, Nathan sensing the gravity of whatever I was preparing to say. When we finished, I took a deep breath. Nathan, there's something important about me that I haven't told you. Something that changes how we need to handle the situation with your parents. He set down his wine glass, giving me his full attention. What is it? Before I became a school counselor, I had a different career. I paused, meeting his eyes directly. I was an FBI agent, specializing in organized crime investigations. Nathan stared at me, his expression frozen between disbelief and confusion. You were what? An FBI agent. For 8 years. I left the bureau 5 years ago, just before we met. That's not possible, he stammered. You're a counselor. You have a degree in psychology. Your colleagues know you from graduate school. My undergraduate degree is in psychology. My graduate credentials were partly established as cover after I left the bureau. I did complete legitimate counseling training, but my history was adjusted. I opened the locked box I'd placed beside the table and showed him my old credentials. I was part of an organized crime task force. My last case involved bringing down the Donovan family in Boston. They were involved in everything from racketeering to human trafficking. Nathan picked up my old ID card, staring at the photo of me with shorter hair and a more severe expression. Why didn't you tell me? We've been married for 4 years. The Donovan case ended badly. A source was compromised. 2 agents died. I received threats against my family. I swallowed hard. I requested a new identity and location. Not witness protection exactly, but a bureau-supported fresh start. Telling anyone about my past could have created risk. Even your husband? His voice held hurt. Especially my husband. The less you knew, the safer you were. I reached for his hand. And after a while, I convinced myself it was better this way. I wanted to be Cassie Miller, school counselor. I wanted to leave Cassandra Reynolds behind. Nathan withdrew his hand, standing up to pace the kitchen. So for our entire relationship, you've been lying to me about something fundamental. I've never lied about who I am as a person, I said quietly. My feelings for you, my values, the life we've built, that's all real. I just couldn't tell you about my professional past. And you're telling me now because of my parents? Because of the threats? I nodded. I have training and connections that can help us. The men your father brought here, the tactics they're using, I recognize the patterns. This isn't just desperate family drama, Nathan. Your father has likely gotten involved with organized crime figures to keep his business afloat. Nathan sank back into his chair. This is insane. My straight-laced country club father involved with criminals? My wife a former FBI agent? I feel like I'm in some bizarre movie. I know it's a lot to process, I acknowledged. But we don't have the luxury of time. Your parents' desperation is escalating, and if your father owes money to the wrong people, they won't stop at vandalism. What exactly are you suggesting? First, I've asked a former colleague to run background checks on the men who came to our house. Second, we document everything and build our legal case. Third, we prepare for worst-case scenarios. Like what? Like a more aggressive attempt to force us out or harm us. I hesitated. Nathan. I know how these situations typically evolve. The pattern suggests we haven't seen their worst yet. Nathan was silent for a long moment, staring at my old badge. Finally he looked up, his eyes troubled but clear. I'm angry that you kept this from me, he said quietly. I thought we didn't have secrets, but right now, we have more immediate problems. He took a deep breath. Tell me what we need to do. Relief washed through me, though I knew this conversation was far from over. The hurt in his eyes told me we would revisit this betrayal of trust many times. Thank you for understanding, I said softly. I don't understand, not fully, he admitted. But I trust you. Even now, I trust that you had reasons. And honestly, having an FBI agent for a wife might be exactly what we need right now. I gave him a small smile. Former FBI agent, but some skills you never lose. As I began outlining our security plan, I watched Nathan struggling to reconcile the woman he'd married with this new revelation. It would take time for him to process, but time was the one thing we might not have. Gerald and his associates wouldn't wait for us to work through our marital issues. And I was right. The next morning brought evidence that the situation was about to get much worse. We returned from grocery shopping on Saturday, to find our front door slightly ajar. Nathan moved to enter, but I grabbed his arm, pulling him back to the car. Call the police, I instructed, my voice low and urgent. Report a break-in. Stay in the car and lock the doors. Where are you going? He asked as I reached into my purse to clear the house. Cassie, no, he protested. If someone's in there, trust my training, I said firmly, revealing my Glock. Make the call now. I approached the house cautiously, using the techniques that had once been second nature. The security system should have alerted us to any breach, but a quick glance at the control panel showed it had been disabled. Professional work. Room by room I cleared our home, finding it empty of intruders but ransacked thoroughly. In the office our filing cabinets hung open, papers scattered across the floor. The safe behind the bookshelf stood open and empty, the family jewelry and emergency cash gone. But it was the targeted nature of the search that confirmed my suspicions. Specific documents were missing, including the house deed, insurance papers and our identifications. This wasn't a random burglary. It was a focused attempt to gather information and valuables. In the bedroom, a message had been spray-painted across our wall. Next time you'll be home. I heard sirens approaching, and holstered my weapon before the police arrived. Officer Davis was among the responding officers, his expression grim as he surveyed the damage. You're lucky you weren't home, he commented, as his partner took photographs of the graffiti. It wasn't luck, I replied. They knew our routine. They waited until we'd left. Nathan stood in the doorway of our bedroom, his face pale. They took the deed to the house, he said. And Grandma Gloria's jewelry. Check your security footage, Officer Davis suggested. The system company should have cloud backup even if they disabled the main panel. He was right. When the technicians from the security company arrived, they were able to retrieve footage showing Troy and Devon breaking in through our back door, their movements methodical and practiced. The timestamp showed they'd entered just 20 minutes after we'd left. I recognize them, Officer Davis said, studying the footage. They're known associates of Frank Wilson, small-time enforcer for bigger operations. Frank Wilson, I repeated, filing the name away to research later. After the police left, Nathan and I began the process of cleaning up. As we worked in silence, his phone rang. It was Richard. Enjoying your weekend? His brother asked, his tone smug. I hear you had some unexpected visitors. Nathan's knuckles whitened around the phone. Did you know about them? Did you know they were going to break into our home? Let's just say I wasn't surprised. Dad's patience is running out, Nathan. The offer still stands. Sign over the house, and this all goes away. Tell Dad he's just added breaking and entering, theft, and criminal threats to his list of problems. Nathan snapped before hanging up. They're getting bolder, I observed, carefully sweeping up broken glass from a picture frame. The photo inside one of Nathan and me on our wedding day had been deliberately torn. What's our next move? Nathan asked, his jaw set in determination that replaced his earlier shock. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Call me. Found connection between Gerald Miller and Frank Wilson. Not good. First, we finish securing the house, I said. Then, I need to make a call. The next morning, as we were replacing the locks for the second time that week, I spotted a familiar SUV parked down the street. Nathan, go inside, I said calmly. We have company. What? Who? Marcus. The tall one from the other day. He's watching the house. Nathan's face hardened. I'm calling the police. Not yet, I said. Let me handle this first. Against Nathan's protests, I walked calmly to my car and drove to the nearby grocery store. As expected, the black SUV followed at a discreet distance. In the store parking lot, I parked deliberately in a secluded corner and waited. Marcus approached my car window, his confidence evident in his relaxed posture. He clearly didn't view me as a threat. Mrs. Miller, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Funny running into you here. Is it? I asked coolly. Seems like you've been running into me quite deliberately. He chuckled. Just keeping an eye on a valuable property. Your father-in-law is very concerned about his investment. It's not his investment, I replied. And you can tell him and Frank Wilson that hot testament and breaking and entering are serious charges. A flicker of surprise crossed his face at the mention of Wilson's name. I don't know what you're talking about, lady. But accidents happen to nice houses like yours. Electrical fires, gas leaks, tragic things, especially when the owners are inside. I stepped out of the car, watching his posture change slightly as he reassessed me. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice dropping. I know exactly who you are, and who you work for. Your presence at my property has been documented and reported. If anything happens to our house or to us, the evidence leads directly to you, to Wilson, and to Gerald Miller." "You threatening me?" he asked, his amusement fading. "No. I'm informing you of facts. Now, here's another fact. I'm not the defenseless housewife you think I am. So the next time you or your friends come to my property uninvited, be prepared for consequences." I held his gaze steadily, until uncertainty crept into his expression. People like Marcus relied on intimidation of the vulnerable. When that dynamic shifted, they often retreated to reassess. "Just delivering a message," he finally said, stepping back. "Mr. Miller wants this resolved by Monday, one way or another." "Duly noted," I replied, getting back into my car. "I have a message too. Tell Frank Wilson to research who he's dealing with. The name Cassandra Reynolds might interest him." I drove away, watching in my rearview mirror as Marcus stood frozen in the parking lot. Using my former name was a calculated risk, but one that might buy us time, if Wilson was smart enough to do his homework. When I returned home, Nathan was frantic. "What were you thinking, confronting him alone?" "Creating uncertainty," I explained. "People like Marcus rely on fear. When you show none, it disrupts their playbook. And if he had attacked you, he wouldn't. Not in public, not without orders." I touched Nathan's cheek gently. "Trust me to know how these people operate." The next day, we met with Rebecca Foster, a lawyer specializing in property disputes and restraining orders. Her office was in a converted Victorian, not unlike our own home, with modern security systems discreetly integrated into the historic architecture. "Based on what you've told me, we have grounds for both criminal charges and civil action," Rebecca explained after hearing our story. "The documented threats, the break-in, the vandalism, all create a clear pattern of harassment and intimidation." "What about the house itself?" Nathan asked. "Could they have any legal claim to it?" "None whatsoever," Rebecca assured him. "I've reviewed the will and property transfer. It's ironclad. Your grandmother left it specifically to you, not to your parents." "There's more," I added. "I have reason to believe Gerald Miller is in debt to Frank Wilson, a known criminal figure in the area. The pressure to acquire our property likely stems from this debt." Rebecca's eyebrows rose. "That adds a serious dimension. If we can prove that connection, the criminal charges become much more severe." "My former colleague is gathering evidence on that front," I said, with a glance at Nathan. "He still tends slightly at references to my previous career." "I'll file for an emergency restraining order tomorrow morning," Rebecca said. "In the meantime, document everything. Avoid direct contact with any of these individuals and maintain your security measures." As we left the lawyer's office, Nathan looked more resolute than he had in days. "I'm done being a victim in this," he said firmly. "It's time we fought back." I squeezed his hand. "That's exactly what we're going to do." Monday morning, I made a series of calls, while Nathan reluctantly went to work, escorted by a private security guard we'd hired for the week. Amanda Harris was my first call. "What have you found?" I asked without preamble. "Your father-in-law is in deep," Amanda replied. "He owes Wilson nearly $800,000 from gambling debts and failed investments. Wilson's using the debt to launder money through the import business. That explains the desperation for liquid assets," I mused. "The house would solve his immediate problem." "There's more," Amanda continued. "Wilson's operation is being investigated by the Boston field office as part of a larger RICO case. Your father-in-law is already on their radar. Can you connect me with a case agent?" "Already did. Jessica Parker is expecting your call. She's particularly interested in the 3 muscle men who've been harassing you." Jessica Parker turned out to be a sharp, no-nonsense agent with an impressive record of organized crime convictions. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown rather than at the field office to maintain a lower profile. "Your father-in-law picked the wrong partners," Jessica told me over espresso. "Wilson is under pressure from higher-ups in the organization. When people get desperate, they make mistakes. Like sending the same men to threaten us and then break into our home," I noted. "Exactly. We've been building a case against Wilson for months, but we've lacked direct evidence of his enforcement tactics. Your situation provides that connection." "What are you proposing?" "A coordinated approach. We continue our investigation while you maintain the pressure through legal channels. If Wilson or your father-in-law escalate, we'll have cause for more direct intervention. And if they come after us more aggressively in the meantime," Jessica smiled slightly. "From what I remember of your work on the Donovan case, you're more than capable of handling yourself until backup arrives." With law enforcement now formally in the loop, I turned my attention to our home security. The system installed after the break-in was good, but not good enough. I called in a specialist I'd worked with during my bureau days, a former Army Ranger named Michael Sullivan, who now ran a private security firm. The existing setup has too many vulnerabilities, Michael concluded after inspecting our property. I can upgrade you to a system that would make Fort Knox jealous, but it'll cost. Do it, I authorized. Money's not the issue right now. Within 48 hours, our home had military-grade surveillance, reinforced entry points, motion sensors, and a panic room converted from our walk-in closet. Michael's team worked efficiently, completing the installation just as Nathan returned home from work on Tuesday. Is all this really necessary? Nathan asked, watching as technicians calibrated the final cameras. Better to have it and not need it, I replied. Besides, we're not just protecting ourselves now. We're gathering evidence. That evening, I deliberately called a local jeweler known for buying estate pieces, and mentioned loudly that we would be bringing in the remaining family jewelry for appraisal on Thursday. Then I called our insurance company and discussed increasing our coverage for irreplaceable items still in the home. What are you doing? Nathan asked when I hung up. Creating bait, I explained. We need them to make another move, but this time on our terms. You're trying to get them to break in again? He asked incredulously. In a controlled situation where we're prepared and can document everything. I laid out the plan. They think we're vulnerable and frightened. We'll use that misconception. The next step was confronting Richard. Nathan's brother had been Gerald's willing accomplice, and potentially our weakest link for gathering evidence. We arranged to cross paths with him at a family event for a cousin's birthday held at a restaurant downtown. The tension was palpable when we arrived. Martha and Gerald had chosen not to attend, but Richard was there with his wife Laura, who looked uncomfortable with the entire situation. I'm surprised you had the nerve to show up, Richard said when he spotted us, his voice just low enough that other family members couldn't hear. We're not the ones who should be ashamed, Nathan replied calmly. How much do you know about Dad's arrangement with Frank Wilson? Richard's face paled slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. The FBI does, I interjected quietly. They're building a RICO case as we speak. Anyone involved could face serious charges. You're bluffing, Richard hissed. But the uncertainty in his eyes was clear. We have the break-in on video, Nathan continued. Troy and Devon are already identified in police reports. The question is, how involved are you? Did you just know about it, or did you help plan it? I discreetly activated the recording device in my purse. Richard glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. Look, I didn't know they were going to break in. Dad just said he was putting pressure on you to be reasonable about the house. He needs it to pay off Wilson before things get worse. Worse, how? Nathan pressed. Wilson's people don't play games. Dad said, either he gets the money from selling your house, or they'll collect through the business and the family. So, you helped him threaten your own brother. Richard had the decency to look ashamed. I was protecting the business, our employees, our family name, by becoming criminals ourselves, Nathan said flatly. Did Mom know about the break-in too? Richard hesitated. She knows everything. She's the one who suggested using the house to solve the problem. As we left the restaurant, the recording safely secured, Nathan was silent. Learning his mother's role had hit him hard. I need to talk to her, he finally said. One-on-one. Are you sure that's wise? No. But it's necessary. I need to hear it from her directly. The next morning, Nathan arranged to meet Martha at a cafe near her weekly hair appointment. I watched from my car across the street, ready to intervene if necessary. Their conversation was intense. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see Martha's face shift from composed superiority to defensive anger, and finally, to something like fear, as Nathan presumably revealed how much we knew. When she left 30 minutes later, her perfect posture had crumbled, and she glanced around nervously before hurrying to her car. She admitted everything, Nathan reported when he returned to my car. Dad owes Wilson for gambling debts and failed investments. They've been using the business to launder money for Wilson's organization. When that wasn't enough, Wilson demanded more direct compensation. Did she understand the legal jeopardy they're in? She does now. I told her about the FBI investigation, the evidence we've gathered. She nearly collapsed when I mentioned RICO charges. Nathan stared out the window. She begged me to reconsider about the house. Said it was the only way out for them. And what did you tell her? That they chose this path, not us. That criminals threatened their son and daughter-in-law. That Grandma Gloria would be ashamed. His voice broke slightly. And that if they come near us again, We'll use every piece of evidence we have. As we drove home, I received a text from Jessica Parker. Wilson making moves. Be alert. Backup ready if needed. Our trap was set. Now we just had to wait for someone to take the bait. Thursday night I sat in our newly converted panic room, monitoring the security feed while Nathan tried to sleep in our bedroom. The jeweler appointment I'd loudly discussed had been scheduled for Friday morning, making Thursday night the logical time for another break-in attempt. At 11:43, the perimeter alarm silently alerted me to movement in our backyard. 3 figures appeared on the infrared camera, approaching the rear door. I recognized Troy, Devin, and Marcus immediately. Nathan, I called softly through the intercom we'd installed. They're here. 3 of them at the back door. Activate protocol. 2. Nathan had insisted on being part of the plan despite my concerns. He quickly moved to his position in the upstairs hallway where he could monitor the second floor while staying safely out of sight. I watched as Troy worked on our back door lock while the others kept watch. Despite the upgraded security, they managed to disable the visible alarm panel and enter within minutes. Professional work confirming my suspicions about their background. Once they were inside, I activated the silent alarm that would alert both our private security team and the police officers Jessica had stationed nearby. Then I sent the text message we'd arranged. Canaries in the cage. The intruders moved methodically through our first floor, heading directly for the study where we'd conspicuously placed a new safe. Inside was costume jewelry, designed to look valuable, along with fake documentation for offshore accounts, another piece of bait. They're at the safe, Nathan whispered through the intercom. Stay in position, I reminded him. Help is 3 minutes out. As the men worked on cracking the safe, headlights swept across the front of the house. A car had pulled up outside. We have new arrivals, I reported, switching to the front camera feed. It's your parents. Gerald and Martha approached the front door, looking anxious. Gerald unlocked it with what must have been a key they'd made during the previous break-in. Their coordination with the intruders was now undeniable, captured clearly on multiple cameras. Mom and Dad are inside, Nathan confirmed, his voice tight. They're talking to the men. I could see them now on the interior cameras, Gerald gesturing emphatically while Martha stood slightly behind him, her eyes darting around nervously. Get the deed and anything valuable, Gerald instructed. We need to make this look like a regular burglary gone wrong. What about the occupants? Marcus asked. Gerald hesitated then said, do what you have to do. Just make sure we get what we need. Martha gasped. Gerald, you said no one would get hurt. Be quiet, Gerald hissed. It's too late for cold feet. That was all the evidence we needed. I pressed the final alert button that would bring in the tactical team, then used the house intercom system to address the intruders. Attention. This property is under surveillance. Law enforcement has been notified and is surrounding the premises. Put your hands up and remain where you are. The chaos erupted. Troy and Devin bolted for the back door while Marcus threw a weapon. Gerald stood frozen in shock while Martha began to cry. Federal agents. Nobody move. Came shouts from outside as tactical teams breached both entrances simultaneously. Within seconds, the house was swarming with FBI agents and police officers. Troy and Devin were tackled attempting to flee, while Marcus surrendered his weapon after a tense standoff. Gerald and Martha were handcuffed and led outside to waiting vehicles. I emerged from the panic room to find Nathan standing at the top of the stairs, watching the scene unfold with a stunned expression. It's over, I told him, taking his hand. We got everything on camera. Multiple felonies, conspiracy, clear evidence of their connection to Wilson. Nathan nodded silently, watching as his parents were placed in separate police cars. Jessica Parker approached us once the scene was secured. Textbook operation, she commented. We've got Wilson in custody too, picked him up simultaneously at his club downtown. His operation is finished. What happens now? Nathan asked. Formal charges will be filed tomorrow. The evidence is overwhelming, so I expect plea deals will be offered. Your parents are looking at serious charges, but cooperation could reduce their sentences. As the law enforcement teams processed the scene, Nathan and I sat on our front porch, watching the activity. Blue and red lights flashed across our yard, illuminating the historic facade of the home that had become the center of so much conflict. I never imagined it would end like this, Nathan said quietly. My parents in handcuffs. Their business exposed as a money laundering operation. I'm sorry it came to this, I said, meaning it. Despite everything, these were still his parents. Don't be. They made their choices. He squeezed my hand. And, in a strange way, their threats brought out the truth about you. No more secrets between us. I nodded, realizing he was right. The crisis had forced me to reveal my past, but in doing so, had removed the barrier I'd built between my former and current selves. No more secrets, I agreed. Cassandra Reynolds and Cassie Miller are finally the same person. As dawn broke over our neighborhood, the last police car pulled away. Our house stood quiet once more, but fundamentally changed. Like us, it had weathered a storm and remained standing. Perhaps stronger for having been tested. #9. Conclusion. Aftermath. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. With overwhelming evidence and the broader RICO investigation into Wilson's organization, prosecutors had a powerful case. Gerald faced charges of conspiracy, extortion, money laundering, and solicitation of burglary. Martha was charged as an accessory, though her attorney argued successfully that she had been coerced by her husband. Troy, Devin, and Marcus quickly turned on their employers, offering testimony against both Wilson and Gerald in exchange for reduced sentences. Richard, too, found himself facing charges for his role in the intimidation campaign. Nathan testified at his father's preliminary hearing, his voice steady as he recounted the threats and break-ins. I sat in the courtroom, watching his strength with pride. My father betrayed everything he claimed to value, Nathan told the court. Family honesty, integrity. He was willing to put his own son and daughter-in-law at risk of physical harm to solve problems of his own making. Gerald barely looked at Nathan during the testimony, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. Martha, seated separately with her own attorney, wept quietly. In the end, Gerald accepted a plea deal that would send him to federal prison for 12 years. Martha received 5 years probation and community service. Their business was liquidated to pay restitution, and both were barred from financial industry positions for life. The aftermath rippled through the family. Some relatives refused to speak to us, blaming Nathan for destroying the family. Others, like Elaine, stood firmly by our side. I always knew Dad had a dark side. She confided over coffee one afternoon. The way he'd threatened to cut off my college funds whenever I disagreed with him. The way he'd pit Richard and Nathan against each other. But I never imagined he'd go this far. Richard's situation proved complicated. Initially charged as a co-conspirator, he eventually received a suspended sentence after cooperating with prosecutors. His marriage to Laura didn't survive the scandal, and he moved across the country to start over. Months after the arrests, Richard called Nathan. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I believed Dad's lies because I wanted to, because it was easier than admitting what he'd become." "It's going to take time, Rich," Nathan replied. "Trust isn't rebuilt overnight." "I know. I just wanted to say it. I'm sorry for everything." Nathan began meeting with a therapist specializing in family trauma. The betrayal by his parents had shaken his fundamental understanding of his childhood and identity. "I keep wondering if I ever really knew them," he confessed, during a quiet evening at home. "Were they always capable of this, or did desperation change them?" "People are complicated," I offered. "They can compartmentalize, justify actions they'd normally condemn. Your father probably never saw himself as the villain in this story. How do you reconcile loving someone with knowing what they're capable of?" "You don't necessarily," I said gently. "You acknowledge both realities. The father who taught you to ride a bike also threatened your safety. Both versions are true. My own professional life changed as well. After discussions with Nathan and careful consideration, I decided to return to law enforcement on a limited basis. The Boston field office offered me a consulting position focusing on financial crimes, allowing me to use my expertise while maintaining my counseling practice. "Are you sure about this?" Nathan asked when I showed him the offer letter. "You left that world for a reason." "I left because I needed to escape after a traumatic case," I explained. "But using those skills again to protect us, to fight back, I realized I've been hiding from a part of myself that doesn't need to stay hidden." He nodded thoughtfully. "I like the idea of you not having to compartmentalize anymore. The whole Cassie is greater than the sum of her parts." Our home, the source of so much conflict, became a symbol of our resilience. We continued the renovations that had been interrupted, creating a space that honored both Gloria's legacy and our own journey. "I think Grandma would approve of the security upgrades," Nathan joked as we installed new lighting in the garden. "She always did say better safe than sorry." On the 1-year anniversary of the night that had ended the threats, we hosted a dinner for those who had stood by us. Elaine and her husband, Amanda Harris, Jessica Parker, and Rebecca Foster. Gathered around Gloria's antique dining table, we raised glasses in a toast. To homes, Nathan said simply. Not just the buildings, but the safety and truth they contain. And to picking the wrong targets, I added with a smile, taking his hand. As our friends laughed and conversation flowed, I looked around at the home we'd fought so hard to protect. It wasn't just the physical structure that had been threatened, but the life and future we were building together. In fighting for one, we had strengthened the other. Later that night, as Nathan and I stood on our porch looking at the stars, he put his arm around me. You know, when I first found out about your FBI past, I was shocked. But now I can't imagine you any other way. Even with all the complications it brought. Especially with those. Because that's what made you who you are. The complications, the contradictions, the strength that comes from overcoming them. I leaned my head against the shoulder, feeling truly at home in both our house and my identity for the first time in years. You were right that night, Nathan murmured. They really did pick the wrong target. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who crossed boundaries? What would you have done in Cassie and Nathan's situation? Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.
After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. *.